So Elic Decosta just had an interview that he revealed some very awesome, key, and revealing information that I think indicates what the Baltimore Ravens could be doing in this upcoming draft. He talks about how the Ravens have been looking for that big body receiver. Also in that interview, he did talk about a big body receiver that the Ravens used to have in Anquan Bolden, who they had to trade in order to open up salary cap space. A low-key need quietly under the radar for the Baltimore Ravens is wide receiver, with Tylan Wallace and Nelson Agholor, who were the Ravens wide receivers 3 and 4 this last year. They're both free agents, so the Ravens have some spots to fill in that department on their roster, and they've been looking for a big body guy. In the last year's draft, they added a 6'1 receiver in Devontae Walker with a lot of speed, but he has a slighter frame. Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers, both really good route runners, not necessarily known for their size and contested catch ability. They could be looking for one of those guys. So I got 3 top 100 NFL draft prospects that are slated to go in the first 2 rounds of the draft that we're going to talk about today. And I'm really excited. But first, I want you guys to go ahead and listen to this interview from Elic Decosta talking about that, how it would be nice to have that big body wide receiver.
We've allocated a lot of resources. We don't have that. The one piece we probably missed on is that big X presence. We've never really had that. We've tried to find that guy. That guy doesn't go on trees, right? They're hard to find those kind of guys, right? That's probably the one thing. But for us, it's always been, okay, offensive line, first and foremost. Keep it strong. Now, we made some changes this year. We had some guys leave, but I think the line this year, we ended up pretty good. But we allocate a lot of resources to the offensive line, running backs, tight ends, and receivers. But then also, I think on defense.
So while I think a wide receiver's ability to separate is one of probably the best trait you can have, is just separating, getting open, which Bateman and Zay Flowers can both do very well, there is also a role for a guy that even if he doesn't have a lot of separation, he can still make the quarterback right, make the catch, adjust, body control, red zone threat, be able to high point. We've seen Lamar throw those type of balls to Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews where they just make him right, and he knows that his guy's going to make a play on the ball. But how nice would it be to have another one of those guys on the outside as a wide receiver that can also separate? And all 3 of these guys that we're going to talk about can separate, can run routes. But let's talk about one of my favorite wide receiver prospects of this year's draft, Savon Williams. All right, Savon Williams out of TCU. He's 6'5", 225 pounds. Let me tell you, man, this guy's got some real juice and acceleration. Even though he's 6'5", he doesn't move like he's 6'5". Like whenever he gets the ball and he kicks into the next gear, he really goes. And what I like about Savon is they use Savon in a kind of like a Debo-esque role, like a Debo Samuel type, where they give him, they line him up at halfback and they have him run routes as a running back. And they also go wildcat and hand him the ball because he's a playmaker with the ball in his hands. He can spin. He can just burst through the hole. He can just outrun guys to the edge, break tackles. He's just really tough. He looks for physicality. I remember liking Debo Samuel a lot whenever I think he was out of South Carolina that year in the draft. I wanted the Ravens to draft Debo, and they did not. I also remember wanting DK Metcalf and the Ravens not drafting him. So I think it's due for the Ravens to have a really physical guy. Like they got the physicality at tight end. They got the physicality at running back with Derrick Henry. They got the physicality on defense. But how about a wide receiver that could add some physicality and some juice in that way? A guy that looks for contact. That would really fire me up to have another playmaker, a guy that can break tackles and just real physical as a wide receiver. Don't get me wrong. I love Bateman and Zay, but I'm just talking about another playmaker because if Zay or Bateman goes down, you need another guy. You need another guy that can step up and make plays. We saw in the Bills game, in a playoff game, Lamar Jackson was throwing passes to like Anthony Miller and Tylan Wallace and his tight ends to march a 90-yard game-tying touchdown drive with a minute and a half left, which was absolutely beautiful drive, by the way. It was like, could have been a career-defining legacy drive for Lamar if Mark Andrews caught that 2-point conversion and they would have won that game and proceeded to the AFC Championship. We would have talked about that as an all-time drive right there with that wide receiver 1 and 2. Because remember, Zay was out to start the game. Bateman got banged up during the game. And then before you know it, wide receiver 1 is like Nelson Aguilar or Tylan Wallace. So you need some more depth at wide receiver, you know? But Savon Williams, so tough after the catch, doesn't go down without a fight. He's 6'5", 225 pounds. But I also love how he has home run playmaking ability where he can really take one to the house. He can get behind the defense as well. Another guy I really like, Elic Ayomanor out of Stanford, 6'2", 209 pounds. What I like about him is he looks for contact. Like, he wants physicality. Some of these guys, you know, can play physical, but then some guys look for it. And, like, that's the type of tone setter I want at the wide receiver position, just to add that mentality, add that personality to the Ravens brand of football at the wide receiver position where, you know, they're going to have to make corners tackle. They're going to have to make these safeties come down and tackle these big physical guys that can also run. But he's got really good movement skills as well. So he doesn't have, like, really tight hips despite being a big and strong guy. He can really move. He can route run. He likes to high point the football with strong hands. He's really tough after the catch. And the thing I just highlighted, like, once, physicality. And some of these offenses that these guys played in, like TCU and Sanford, aren't like the top offenses to really display their skills, if that makes sense. Like, some of these, they weren't asked to run all the routes, or, you know, they didn't have the best quarterback play. So they're kind of making the best with what they're getting, but they're still shining. So Elic Ayomanor, Savon Williams, two guys. And then Trey Harris, who was actually mocked to the Baltimore Ravens in the first round. I saw a couple of weeks ago by one of the mock draft articles. Trey Harris out of Ole Miss. On the draft simulator I was just using from Pro Football Network, he was the 40th overall prospect, so he'd be like early second round, but people were saying he could slip into the end of the first round, which is where the Ravens would draft. The Ravens really fell in love with the receiver, and I would not be surprised if they went receiver in the first 2 rounds, especially 3 rounds, because there's a lot of guys that have these big frames that are going to be in that 2nd and 3rd round range. So just keep your eye out. I remember there was a similar draft. I think, what year was it, man? It was the year that Michael Pittman and T. Higgins were in the same draft. And we were talking about some of these bigger guys that you could get in the 2nd round. But T. Higgins went 33rd overall pick. You know, he was drafted at the same time as Joe Burrow out of Clemson. And because these teams saw the value of these receivers. It didn't last deep into the 2nd. It was like mid-2nd. It was T. Higgins, then Michael Pittman, who's a big physical receiver. They both those receivers have made a lot of plays and have been super important to their offense and added a layer in a physicality and a tone setting to their offense. This is a similar type of draft where I think there's going to be some bigger guys that you can get in that 2nd round, but I don't think they're going to last very long because teams always need receivers and they value the receiver position. But Trey Harris, 6'2", 205, good in the red zone. That's kind of what he's been known for, is like a red zone guy. He's not as weighty as these other 2 prospects. He doesn't look as thick to me. Looks a little bit, lankier, but he's long and can use his body and his frame. It's not like he's afraid of physicality. He definitely will use his body to kind of shield off defenders. But he also has good routes and good body control. So there's 3 guys. There's more guys we'll talk about in the future. But I just thought it was really cool that, you know, we got to hear this interview come out from Eric Decosta talking about, the big body X that they've been looking for. And there's some guys in this year's draft. It's also worth mentioning T. Higgins is a free agent if he doesn't get tagged or if he doesn't get signed to an extension. I think the Bengals would be stupid to not at least tag and trade him, but because he's going to get paid somewhere. There's also Chris Godwin, who is more of a slot receiver, but he's like a 6'1", 6'2" type of guy, physical. He actually torched the Ravens a little bit before he had that injury. You guys can remember, I think it was Roquan Smith that ended up injuring Chris Godwin, which was obviously unintentional. More than likely that the Baltimore Ravens get a guy in the draft than free agency because they're going to have to pay Kyle Hamilton, Tyler Linderbaum, and then Zay Flowers within the next few years here. And then Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews are going to be free agents the year after that. And then Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely are also going to be free agents next year. And we'll talk about that. We'll keep that as a teaser because I think the Ravens are going to surprise some people with what they do with the tight end position. But I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. I thank you all for tuning in. Let me know your favorite wide receiver prospects. If there's anyone else you want me to go like check out, and that you think I should go take a look at because they're your guy or whatever, let me know in the comments. Let me know all your favorite prospects. Let me know, what positions the Ravens should prioritize in the draft. But hit the like button if you got any value out of today's content. I love y'all. Appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next video.
Ray, when he wasn't looking, he ran me over.